Yeah, for sure. All right, want to talk about Congress being back in session today, and at the top of the list, in terms of that to-do list, is voting on President Obama's Iran nuclear deal. The deal has enough votes to override a veto, but that doesn't mean it will be a smooth ride on the Hill. Want to bring in former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and AEI Senior Fellow, John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, great to see you. Thanks so much for weighing in here. First, let's talk about the Iran deal. I want to get your take on presidential politics as well. But how does this play out? The vote coming up on September 16th.
Well, it looks like the president's within a dime of getting enough votes to sustain a filibuster, which would spare him a veto, spare him 2 weeks of political confrontation. He would be in a much better position to say to our allies and others around the world that he prevailed than if he has to do it at the last trench. So I think he's going to put a lot into this. But the fact is, one way or another, the United States will enter into this deal and it will go forward, as it will for the other signatories.
Assess for us how important the foreign relations and national security is in this upcoming election.
Well, I think it's going to be a central issue. I think the political conventional wisdom that it's always about the economy is not going to be right here. I think people are very concerned about what they see as a bad deal. Most public opinion polls indicate that. I think people are extraordinarily concerned about the rise of the Islamic State, Russia's adventurism in Eastern and Central Europe, China's adventurism in the South China Sea. They see a weak and feckless president, and they don't want it repeated. So I think from a Republican perspective, the candidate who shows that he or she can be a leader is going to have a real advantage.
Yeah. Anastasia.
So this seems to me this is not just a U.S. issue, right? This is really looking at the refugee crisis in Europe. This is a European issue. This is a United Nations issue. So, I mean, is Iran a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Does it help us with national security? Does it hurt it?
No, it's a grave threat to American national security. This basically allows Iran to proceed to a nuclear weapons capability at a time of its choosing, whether it conforms to the deal or whether it violates the deal. And I personally think it's already in violation. I think you'd have to have 100% faith in American intelligence to believe that we know exactly where Iran is on the nuclear program. If we've learned anything in the past 15 years, it ought to be to have a little humility about our intelligence capabilities. And you have to assume we'll be perfect going forward. And that isn't going to happen either. Even worse, other countries in the region have sized up what's been going on, and we already have a nuclear arms race underway. The Saudis, the Egyptians, the Turks, and others. So this most volatile region of the world is about to get much more dangerous.
They're going to all want a nuclear bomb, Dagen.
Ambassador, with the flood of refugees going into Europe, what does that do? You have basically a part of the Middle East that's being picked up and placed in the center of Europe, right?
Yeah.
And that's how do we cope with that economic burden, that societal change? Are we underestimating what the impact of it?
Well, I think we are so far. Look, this flow now is caused by chaos in the region, and populations think they're never going to go back to their homes, so they're determined to go somewhere else. The main culprit at this point is Turkey. Under the International Refugee Conventions, Turkey has an obligation to provide first asylum, and instead it's just letting these people flow through. Germany's another part of the problem, with Chancellor Merkel saying she would take 800,000 Syrian refugees. That's 1% of the German population. If we were to do the same, it would be 3 million Syrian refugees. Chancellor Merkel said a day or two ago, this will change Germany forever, and she was proud of it. These people are not going to have humanitarian visas, or they may have humanitarian visas. They're never leaving Germany. You've just changed the fundamental nature of the country. And
this is a region that struggled with multiculturalism.
It's failing.
Multiculturalism is what has created a lot of the terror that you see.
I believe this is going to cause enormous political tension inside the European Union. If you're Hungary or Austria or Greece, the transit routes into Germany, this is something that's going to overwhelm these smaller countries. And we see the problem spreading. If you look at these pictures of the entrance to the Channel Tunnel, thousands of people trying to get into that tunnel to get to the United Kingdom. This is very serious for the European Union.
Yeah, those pictures are unbelievable. So what should the U.S. be doing about this?
Well, I think we've got to insist to Turkey that you hold the people there in the camps. Everybody's got to do more to provide assistance and shelter for people in the camps. And what we fundamentally should be doing is developing a strategy to eliminate the Islamic State, because unless you eliminate the problem, you're never going to eliminate the symptom, which is what the refugee flows are.
All right, we will leave it there. Ambassador, great to have your insight.
Thank you.
We so appreciate it. Ambassador John Bolton there. Coming up.